So, hello, everybody. Like Nancy said, my name is Erin Parks, and I'm with Oklahoma Family Network. And we're so thrilled to have you this evening. We at Oklahoma Family Network, we are a statewide nonprofit organization that offers family support that have kiddos with special needs or behavioral health care challenges. So, one of the things that we do is we offer these monthly mental health presentations. They're called the Family Matters series. And what we do is we have two a month. So if you have not joined us for one of these, we have this one. And then November 18th, Lauren will be doing one on creative consequences. So that'll be a really good one as well on November 18th. I also want to say that all of these presentations are actually recorded and you can hear them on our YouTube channel. So I will be sending you a follow-up email that has our YouTube link. But if you just Googled Oklahoma Family Network YouTube, you would be able to find all of our past recordings that Lauren has done for us. If one really resonates with you, Lauren is gracious that she allows us to have her presentation along with all the handouts. And so if you listen to one of those on our YouTube channel that you would like us to send, I can send you that presentation and all of Lauren's handouts for that particular presentation that you would like more information about. So we really appreciate Lauren giving us the opportunity to share those. We also have a podcast called We Saved You a Seat that offers lots of stories of inspiration and encouragement for families. But I just want to introduce our speaker. Lauren Alvarez. She is an elementary school counselor at Jinx East Elementary. I had the pleasure of working with her and partnering her when I worked at the elementary school that she's at. And so she works a long day counseling our kiddos and managing a school because I know she does. She does amazing. But I'm going to pass the mic over to her. But you guys are in for a treat. Please know that if you have a question, if you could please put it in the chat and then we'll get to those at the end. Lauren is always so gracious to stay and make sure those questions are answered. So again, if you have a question, put that in the chat and we'll get those at the end of the presentation. Thank you so much. And Lauren, I'll turn it over to you. Thank you again.
Thank you, Erin. All right, I am going to, let's see if this works. Okay, this is my first, okay. Can you guys see Erin, can you see the presentation or just my face?
I can see
What's,
both. You're great.
okay, great. Okay, great. All right, wanted to be sure. Okay, so this is a class that I wish someone had taught me when I was a mom with, at one point I had 3 children, 5 and under. So sibling rivalry was intense. And now I have 4 children and only one is left at home. Although I did get to see my 24-year-old today. He came in town just for a little bit. So this is a topic that's near and dear to my heart. Like Erin said, I'm a school counselor at Jenks East Elementary. I work with 3rd and 4th graders, but really I work with pre-K kids all the way through high school. I do classes for Oklahoma Family Network and Family and Children Services. Have taught classes for Family and Children Services for the last now almost 20 years. It's kind of crazy to think about. And absolutely love working with Oklahoma Family Network because I'm a big believer in doing things that are practical. So I love that the stuff they offer is almost always free. And they really just try to get good support and good information in people's hands. Now, on my credentials for tonight, not only did I list my professional credentials, I am also a survivor of sibling rivalry, myself being having 2 siblings, and then I'm a parenting survivor of sibling rivalry. And I will say it was intense when my sons were younger. Like I had to watch to make sure someone didn't get hurt. And now my children are, I have 24, 27, and 29-year-old sons who all get along great now. You would never have imagined it 20 years ago. And then I have a 15-year-old daughter still at home. So she doesn't really experience sibling rivalry anymore since she's been in the home alone for the last 4 years. But it was even funny to see her little 2-year-old self having sibling rivalry with her 11-year-old brother. They're much older than her. So those survival skills definitely helped. We will be operating from this book, Siblings Without Rivalry. I've included a link to that at the very end of the presentation. And like Erin said, the whole entire presentation will be emailed to you. And then there's some videos that are embedded in the presentation. I just want this to be practical for you. So the whole purpose of tonight is first, if we can start to understand the reasons behind sibling rivalry, it can sometimes help us respond with a little more empathy towards our kids. So there's a fun story I'll tell you that gets you to think, oh, because in our brains, why can't they just get along? There's reasons for that. Also, some very practical ways to reduce jealousy and conflict, and like very specific, even words to say when you're trying to help out with a conflict between siblings, and then some prevention and intervention strategies. One thing, I don't know if your children are familiar with the books like graphic novels, Diary of a Wimpy Kid, where kind of the book is part cartoons, part words. But that's one thing I love about Siblings Without Rivalry. It literally will take scenarios that you would recognize and then tells you how you respond in a way that's not helpful and how you can respond in a way that is helpful. So I have embedded some of those cartoons in the presentation, but then also some charts that summarize what the cartoon is saying. So I feel like it's a really easy read, very practical. So it's a great book. There's no way in 1 hour we can cover everything you need to know about sibling rivalry, that's for sure. So I'm going to start off with a video. And when I watch this, I'm always watching videos and then I send myself emails. Oh, I need to add this to the class. And I watched this about 6 months ago and it really hit me. Um, Not only are our children different, um, with their own personalities, their own temperaments, um, the parent that each of our children experiences is different. Because the parent that I was with my firstborn son, Austin, 29 years ago, is very different than the parent I am with my 15-year-old daughter. She's my first girl, she is 14 years younger than her oldest brother. So this really just kind of blew my mind. So I'm so impressed with Alberto, our translator. So I hope he can keep up with the video of my video. All right, here we go. And let's do this.
In your work, what have you discovered about how siblings can grow up in the same house?
No siblings grow up in the same house. No siblings have the same parents. No siblings have the same family. No siblings have the same childhood. Why not? There are a whole lot of reasons. Number one, there's the birth order. Parents don't relate to the first child the way they relate to the second child. Then there's gender differences. Parents don't relate to, I'm not talking about whether parents love the kids or not. I'm talking about what actually happens. The child doesn't experience the parents' love. The child experiences the way the parent shows up. So, number one. Number two, the parents' relationship might be in a different phase, one child and another. Then, the parents might be in a different economic situation. The parents' lives might be different. Then, each child will evoke a different response from the parent. Like with my 3 kids or your 3 kids. Yeah, you have 3 children. Yeah, you have 2 daughters and a son. I have 2 sons and a daughter. It's not that I loved or we loved any one of them more than the other, but we responded to them differently. And there's one more factor, which is children are born with different temperaments, which is they experience the world differently. So even if I could be the same parent to all my kids, which I couldn't be, they'd still have 3 different parents because they would experience me differently.
First saw that, it just blew my mind to think, I thought about different temperaments and different things like that. And I know birth order definitely has an impact on your parenting because the things that I would stress out about with my first child didn't even stress me out by my second, third, fourth child. Now I'm remarried. So it was also very interesting to see our daughter is my husband's first child. She's my fourth. So it was so funny most of the time. It was so funny to just see his experience and the things he would be in a panic about with this baby. And I'd be like, that's like, just do this. No, I don't know. He would worry and question and these were things because I'd already experienced three children. I had the context of saying that's not a big deal. But to think that my children experienced a different me is really interesting to think about. Because they can grow up in the same exact household and have a completely different experience. So that just kind of blew me away. And some of that can contribute to sibling rivalry. And like he said, we respond to our children differently and they provoke a different response. Some of my children were very stubborn and I might have a different response for those versus my others were just, okay, mom, it just depends. So there's a lot of different layers of things. And I always like to look at information or things that are impacting parenting from a systems approach. This is all part of a system. We are not the only part of this system that can control or prevent or perfectly respond to sibling rivalry. But the more we understand the system, the more effectively we can respond to it. So that video really made me think. Now, he mentioned some of the causes, the things that contribute to sibling rivalry. So first, this is choice. Siblings do not choose the family that they are born into or their siblings. And I can say growing up, two of my sons, if they had not been born in the same family, but let's say they were in the same class at school, they would not have been friends. They would have probably argued a lot. Just their temperaments were so different. They probably would not have gotten along. But hey, they're born in the same family. They didn't have a choice in that. And so some of that just natural personalities might clash, other personalities might get along easier. And I think that's hard for us as parents when we see someone else, that magical family where everyone seems to get along. It's a lie, but maybe their children get along better than our children do. There's so many things. Our kids did not choose their siblings. As a couple, the parents chose each other initially, but we did not. Kids do not choose their siblings. Another one is temperament as well as age. So at different ages, there can be a lot more rivalry. For me, it was the most intense for when they were 5 and under. And then for a couple of mine, it extended on into around 10. But it got easier as they got older. And a lot of that has to do with brain maturity. It can also depend on how old the children are when the next child is born. My first two were only 22 months apart. So I had not even a 2-year-old who is now the oldest with a brand new baby. Well, a 2-year-old doesn't like to share. What makes you think they're going to want to share their mommy with this new little baby? I remember we had our second son was home. And it was like just a few hours after he came home from the hospital, my oldest is like, so when do you take him back? Like, plus also different temperaments. You might have an anxious personality type. You might have a go with the flow personality type. It just depends. And when they're under 5, that temperament is very much developing. Different parental temperaments also can interact with other temperaments differently. So all of those things can contribute to more or less conflict. Birth order is huge. So birth order is, you have your firstborn, your secondborn, your thirdborn, and your fourthborn. And, I did not include that in this, but I'm going to make sure, Erin, that I email these to you when I send you the presentation. I have some birth order notes from a class I did 15 years ago. But it literally has typical parental responses to the firstborn child, to the middle child, to the second child, to the youngest child, to the only child. And so those expectations and experiences are very different. Your firstborn has you all to themselves. Your secondborn has to instantly share. They never have you all to themselves. I know our daughter is our last one home. I only have 3.5 years with her where she's going to be in high school and still with us, and I'm cherishing every minute. So I go to everything. Whereas when the boys were young and all three of them were together, it was like survival mode. And a lot of times, oldest children are expected to mature much more quickly since they're the oldest, but like a 22-month-old is the oldest with a brand new child, but they're not mature. So there's a lot of times for the oldest child, there's a lot of maturity expectations for them that are not developmentally appropriate. So birth order can definitely impact it. Blended families. And, my family has experienced, blended family. So no matter the relationship, blended family somehow comes from loss. It could be loss through someone passing away. It could be loss through divorce. It could be loss through a broken relationship, and now a new family is coming together. But somewhere along the way, at least one part of that blended family has experienced loss in some way. Sometimes too, birth orders can be instantly changed. So I'm remarried, but my husband had no children. One of my good friends, she remarried, and her oldest was no longer the oldest. Because her oldest, now that they were blended with her husband's oldest, and his daughter was older than my friend's daughter. So, just, like birth order was instantly changed. I'm used to being the oldest, and now someone's older than me, or maybe someone was the baby and now they're not the youngest anymore. So, like some of those are instant changes. Now we might be having to share space in a blended family when I didn't have to do that before. Like, well, this is my room, but now I've got to share it with you, or I had to move room. There's a lot that goes on. And, different parenting styles. They each sets of children have grown up with their own, original parent. And now two different people are coming together that already have established parenting styles that may be very different. All of those things can increase conflict. So it's also really important if you are in a blended family, highly, highly, highly recommend at least reading a book about parenting step families. So there's one that I really like, and actually, let me put that in the chat section. It's called Active Parenting, um, Parenting for Step Families. And it is, they used to offer a class at Family and Children Services, but not enough people signed up, even though to me that's the greatest need. And it really goes through, you can't use original family parenting strategies in a blended family, especially when it comes to discipline and stuff. So it gives really practical tips. So if you're maybe thinking that a lot of yours is conflict at home is coming from maybe the blended family dynamic, that book, but both parents need to read it. It can't just be one parent. Even if only one parent reads it, that can make a difference, but both parents really need to read that. Jealousy. Children are in competition for the attention of the parents. Whether they are consciously thinking about it or not, that is the drive. Our interactions or reactions to the children, even like in a conflict, in a weird way, kids use that to prove who is our favorite. So like if I always take the youngest child's side, then they're your favorite. Or if I always take the oldest child's side, they're your favorite. Like children aren't logical in their interpretations, and the kind of data they gather is not logical. It's very much feelings based. So if it feels like you are favoring someone, then they're your favorite. And sometimes too, there's even sometimes younger children will pick a fight with the older just to kind of be like, ha ha, see what I can get away with. So, there's a lot of jealousy, and story I'm about to tell you will help that make sense to you. And then parenting styles, different parenting styles, the attitudes of the parent, how parents respond to different children, what are our consequences and our communication look like. There is a class that we had a couple weeks ago, effective communication. And I know there's a previous class of the effective communication that is recorded on the YouTube channel. Highly recommend watching it simply because communication is everything. So that can prevent or increase sibling conflict. So there's so many pieces to this system. But you might think about your family and thinking about that, which of these things are maybe increasing or helping with the sibling rivalry. So let me tell you a little story. And this is a story that's in this book that when I read it, I'm like, oh my gosh, I never thought about it that way. So imagine this. So, I'm a wife, I'm going to tell this story from the point of view of a wife. So let's say you are married or in a significant, a committed relationship with your significant other. And let's say your partner comes in and it's like, honey, I just love you so much. I'm going to get a second wife. And you're like, what? I didn't, what? And you're kind of like in shock. So then they bring the new wife or the new partner home. And you're kind of the one who's been here and you had them first, and now they bring the new partner home. And then every time, like you're going out in public or you're going over to people's houses, everyone's paying attention to the new wife and, oh, how are you? And oh, look at you, you're so cute. And they kind of ignore you because they already know you. And then your partner goes into your closet and starts taking out some of your clothes to give to the new wife. And you're like, those are my things. Oh, they don't fit you anymore. You've gained some weight. They don't fit you anymore. And you haven't used these in years. So I'm going to give these to the new wife. And since the new partner is like so exciting and all that, they spend more time with them and they require more time with them. And then, maybe they're like hanging out together and then they're like, oh, honey, I need you to watch them while I go to the store. Now, imagine as an adult with a fully developed brain, what kind of thoughts might be going through your head about things that you wanted to do to this new partner? The jealousy would sometimes be overwhelming and probably lead to a lot of conflict or a lot of bickering and, anger towards the parent or, the new partner. It's the same with our kids. We love our baby so much that we want to have another one. We want to adopt another one. And so you're like, oh, you're going to have a little brother or sister. And they're like, wait, what? And they might seem excited at first until now that new little kiddo comes in and now they're having to share a room or they're having to share their stuff or share their toys. And everyone pays attention to the new baby and forgets the first child. Can you imagine? I mean, if we can think with some empathy, that's where we would be jealous too. But now that we're grown, sometimes it's hard to remember where that jealousy comes from. There's nothing wrong with the jealousy. That's normal. But how we express the jealousy, I mean, we're giving our children the opportunity to learn to manage jealousy. Like it's an uncomfortable emotion. As adults, do we struggle with jealousy? Of course we do, because we're human. So it's good for us to have that experience. There are also some home environments that increase sibling rivalry. If it's a very competitive environment, where competition is really encouraged even between siblings, expectations or standards are set too high. So it's almost like impossible to reach. And then, if one child happens to naturally be better at certain things than their sibling, they can overshadow and lead to a lot of jealousy and maybe get a lot more attention from the parents simply because they excel in a certain area. Where value judgments are based on performance. So if it's a very performance oriented household where the messages are, I'm going to give you positive attention when you are exceeding and succeeding, not all kids, you're going to have kids that go through seasons of life where they really struggle. One of my children did not make good grades in high school, completely knocking it out of the park as an adult. But in comparison to his brothers, didn't make good grades. If that had been my focus, oh, well, you're not as good as your brothers because your GPA is not as good. Was I concerned? Sure, I was concerned. Like, okay, is this going to impact him? And will this limit his opportunities in his future? But I was still able to communicate those messages of, I love you, you're amazing. Let's look at your strengths. I mean, he's the one he's doing fantastic. So, but if we only value performance, that can really lead to a lot of competition. If there's little organization in the household, so it's a little more chaotic, or there's not enough monitoring, then sibling rivalry can run rampant. I kind of compare this to a classroom. A teacher with good classroom management is going to have less behavior problems typically than a teacher where it's chaotic, it's unpredictable, or they're never paying attention. It just creates an environment where it's easy to get away with stuff. Or if children are very close in age, can lead to intense sibling rivalry of the same sex. So like, two girls close in age, two boys close in age, and there can be a lot of competition. Because a lot of times when children are super close in age, the children can sometimes lose their individuality and parents will treat them like a unit instead of individuals. So that might be an environment that might have more sibling rivalry, but there are benefits. And think about this. Sibling rivalry is natural, healthy, and believe it or not, necessary. It's like social skills boot camp. What are you learning when you are fighting with your siblings? How to resolve conflict, negotiating skills, because guess what? You are sharing from day one. learning that give and take. All right. You get a little bit more here. I take a little bit more here. That's a great life skill. Problem solving, standing up for themselves and what they believe, learning to win and lose. These skills that you learn in the middle of sibling rivalry and sibling conflict, those are great skills. If we learn the skills, we're going to carry into adulthood. And a lot of times, kids who fight really a lot as young children get along great as adults. I know my older brother and my younger sister, oh, he was so awful to her when they were growing up, and he's the first to admit it. They were really good friends in adulthood. So it's just crazy. So now here's the other thing. If we can let go of this dream, this fantasy, this unrealistic fantasy that they're all going to like each other. Like I said, two of my sons, they get along great now, but they did not even like each other growing up. And it was hard to watch. We have this unrealistic goal that our children will actually like each other instead of holding on to that fantasy and constantly feeling disappointed. Instead, focus on how to equip them with the attitudes and skills they need to foster a caring relationship with someone they don't like. How can I get along with someone I don't like? How can I still take responsibility for my own actions and my own behavior and actually build up that relationship? It's not about right or wrong. It's about how can we learn to listen? How can we learn to respect each other's differences? How can I find ways to resolve the conflict? If we keep holding on to this fantasy that our kids are going to like each other just because maybe when you were growing up, you got along really well with your sibling, or maybe a friend of yours, their kids just seem to get along and are just so sweet and kind towards each other, good for them. It doesn't mean that your house that might have more sibling rivalry is not teaching your children amazing life skills. I mean, sometimes they're more equipped socially and in relationships because they've had to forge these skills through the fire of sibling conflict. Okay. Now, there's different levels of sibling conflict, which will impact how we respond to it. Okay, first off, minor sibling conflicts. This is where they might be kind of competing for attention, kind of annoying, kind of nagging, those kinds of things. And it's best to ignore this level. I don't have to jump in and fix everything. I can be proactive with individual time. So if I'm seeing a lot of minor flare-ups where it kind of feels like they are trying to get my attention or compete for my attention, one way to be proactive about that is how can you schedule some of that individual time? We did a class in September, I think, on the 5 love languages of children. And it's recorded as well. And on the Oklahoma Family Network YouTube video. And I even have a link to it in this presentation, because that to me, if we are filling our child's needs in their love language, which is how they like to receive attention, oftentimes it can do away with some of this need to compete for our attention. Try to build in that quality time, or meet their love language needs. For an example, when my daughter was born, she was 9 years younger than the next oldest brother. So when she was about 2 and my youngest son was around 11, I mean, my life was consumed. I was working full time, also doing some side jobs, also taking care of a toddler, and I'd get home from work and it's feeding, it's bathing, it's taking care of a 2-year-old. So I used to have these really nice structured routines with my sons, and I'd put them to bed, tuck them in, spend about 10, 15 minutes with each of them. We had our own little songs and little things we would do for connection, scratching backs and all that. And that went out the window. Like, you're 11, you can put yourself to bed. I've got to, give a 2-year-old a bath that I'm exhausted because I've been at work all day. So he started to get a lot more of a defiant attitude. There's a lot of back talk. There was a lot of fine, whatever. And I found myself having to correct him almost constantly. And he normally was a very sweet, easy to get along with kid. And he was also even getting into trouble at school, kind of back talking teachers. He had never done that. And so, after a little bit of this, one night I put him to bed and I'm like, I don't know what's happened to you. It's like, all you do is back talk. And he goes, well, all you do is boss me around. So I said, I'm going to listen to how I talk to you. And I did. Really, for every 25 things I said to him, 20 of them were a command. Put your backpack away. Come on. be quiet. You know, you're being too loud on your video games. Most of my interactions with him was just quick, short directions. And I was not spending some individual time with him. All time was consumed with little sister. So without him realizing it, no attention, negative attention was better than no attention. So that him not having some of that individual time with just me was contributing to a lot more sibling conflict. And it gets really irritating when an 11-year-old is picking little things with a 2-year-old who is more than happy to pick things back with him. When I was more proactive about spending time with him and reinstituting spending time with him for his bedtime and trying, sharing some of the toddler responsibilities with my husband, his attitude improved just by meeting his needs. So if you're seeing a lot of competition, irritating stuff to try to get our attention, try to get ahead of that as much as you can by carving out individual time. Now, there might be more significant conflict. And this is where children are trying to constantly pull us in as referees, hoping that the parent will side with them. In this situation, if we jump in and fix it, they never get a chance to develop patience, conflict resolution, getting along with someone you don't like, because we take over. So this is where us trying to fix the problem actually keeps the problem going. You can use specific strategies that we're going to go through from the book. I'm also a huge believer in family meetings, and there will be a link to family meeting handouts that's at the end of the presentation. A family meeting is like a regularly scheduled meeting. Maybe it's weekly for you. And it's where we sit down, we have like a list of things we're going to talk about. Everyone's calm, we take turns walking around. We'll have some things that explain family meetings. But it creates a format where everyone has a chance to say something and solve problems. You might call it an emergency family meeting if I'm seeing a pattern. Hey, this is the last 3 days we're seeing this. We might call an emergency family meeting. But regular family meetings help address a lot of the things that kids want to fight about and asking us to solve for them. So that are some suggested responses. Now, I found this super awesome article, which there's a link at the end of the presentation, where it literally gives you the steps on what you as a parent, how do I respond to this? All right, level 1, which should be like minor, normal bickering. Steps to take as a parent, ignore it. Think about your next vacation. Like literally, I'm not going to get sucked into this tunnel. I'm going to ignore it and tell yourself that children are having an important experience with conflict resolution. Remind yourself of the skills they are taking. Now, there is a fun consequence from parenting with love and logic, which you can do if their normal bickering is just really draining your energy. In parenting with love and logic, one of their strategies is charge them money. If they just want to argue about everything and it's not your job to jump in and solve the problem, but it's becoming more and more irritating, say, all right, I'm starting my timer. You're going to have to pay me $1 a minute for every minute that I have to listen to you guys arguing in the car. And that could solve that problem pretty quickly. So you're not solving the problem for them, but you're letting them know, hey, there's going to be a cost if you continue to try to solve your problems in this way that's really annoying. What about a level 2 where the situation's heating up and you might need to intervene, but not in a way that fixes it for them, but actually might kind of guide them a little bit, but let them fix it. So if they need a little intervention, here's what the adult steps you could take. Acknowledge their anger. Hey, I can see you guys are angry. You seem to be upset because he wants the soccer ball, and you seem to be upset because you want the soccer ball. So you can describe what the problem is. And then once you kind of acknowledge their feelings, tell them what you observe, then you can say, and you know what? I really trust that you guys are going to figure out how to share the soccer ball, and then leave the room. So you're kind of slowing them down a minute to help them see perspectives, but then express your confidence. Here's an example. You two sound mad. So Sarah, so that just acknowledged their anger. So Sarah, you want to keep on holding the puppy because he's just settled down in your arms. And Billy, you feel like you need a turn too. That's a tough one. 2 children, 1 puppy. I have confidence that the 2 of you can work out a solution that's fair to you and fair to the puppy. That is like a conversation example of these steps. acknowledge their feelings, help them quickly see things from the other person's point of view. Here's the problem that you guys need to solve. I trust that you guys can do this. You guys have this. Great response to Sibling Rivalry. You're not actually taking sides. If you take sides, that's that secret thing that children do to prove who's your favorite, which it's not even accurate interpretation. But again, children are not logical. All right. Now, what about the more serious? So it might be physical wounding. It might be serious verbal wounding. If we're allowing in our own household, like serious name calling and verbal, I would call it verbal abuse, where they are purposefully using their words to cause emotional damage. I shouldn't have said that because now it makes me think of that emotional damage. I hear all these things at school all day. But that's serious. So it might be actually a physical fight or just some of those so extremely hateful and hurtful things. You've got to stop it, separate. I can see you're mad. I can see you're mad. Send them off to separate areas and then to allow them to cool off before we come back together, where we are solving this and setting guidelines in a firm way, and you can have consequences for this. But if you try to, while everyone's still angry and in the same room, you try to work through this, it's not possible. We've done a class in the past, dealing with anger in the family, and I'm sure we'll do it in the future too. But when your brain is what I call T-Rex brain, when your amygdala is activated, if you keep trying to talk through a problem with two children whose amygdala, their fight or flight, their T-Rex brain is activated, you sound like Charlie Brown's teacher. Wah, 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 wah. Doesn't make sense. So you have to stop, separate them while acknowledging their feelings, give them or require them to do things that would have them cool off, and then you can come back together. But you've got to set firm, absolute expectations on this. Because if you don't, this is where a lot of damage can happen. And I'm a big believer in having consequences for that. And I'll give you some ideas for that, especially if you join us in a couple of weeks when we do our consequences class. If there's a lot of physical or verbal fights, I would highly recommend having regular family meetings. Because what happens is if the little things keep building up to an explosion and there's no tool or structure within the household to actually deal with this stuff, so then all these things do pile up and lead to an explosion. And one of the reasons they lead to an explosion is our kids' brains are not fully developed. So that prefrontal cortex, the thinking brain, you can flip your lid, you can go offline, you cannot do well. And because they don't know how to fully manage and regulate emotions. If you have regular family meetings, sometimes that's almost like a prevention. Just think of like a fight that sometimes couples have. They're not really fighting about one thing. They're fighting about all 20 things they didn't discuss when they needed to. So then all those 20 things, now it seems like we're mad about you not doing the dishes, but what I'm really mad about is this, this, and this. If you have regular family meetings, that can really help keep some of those tensions from building and building. I do recommend though, if a lot of times both parents, if there's two parents in the household, if you don't agree on things, you probably should meet before so that you can at least agree on guidelines and maybe even consequences before having these meetings. Because we don't want to like one parenting style undermine that when we're having a lot of physical verbal warning. So here's a chart example of what this might be. So if it's a level 3, the situation is possibly dangerous. Your parental steps to take: inquire, let the children know, respect your feelings. Here's what that sounds like. All right, inquire. Is this a play fight or a real fight? Because remember, play fights are permitted, real fights are not. All right, play fighting by mutual consent only. So when you're letting the children know, you're reminding them of the standard. And if it's not fun for both, it needs to stop. So in this situation, it might have started as a play fight, but maybe only one person wants this play fight, the other person doesn't. So inquire, is this a play fight or a real fight? Because you're walking in on a situation you might not know. Let the children know your standard. All right, play fighting by mutual consent only. If it's not fun for both of you, it's got to stop. And respect feelings. You may be playing, but it's too rough for me. You need to find another activity. You are allowed to draw that boundary because this isn't just about the children. They are learning the life skill of living in an environment that's not just about them. Is their behavior, how is it negatively impacting the other people that are in this family system? And that's a really good lesson for them to learn. Hopefully it makes them an easier employee, an easier future partner, an easier roommate. So inquire, let them know the standard and let them know, hey, you might be playing. This is too rough for me. I'm not comfortable with this. I need you to find something else to do. But what if it's definitely dangerous? Adult intervention is absolutely necessary. Describe what you see and separate. Here's what it sounds like. I see two very angry children who are about to hurt each other. It is not safe to be together. You have to have a cooling off period. You go to your room, you go to your room. And then you'll have to have that moment after we've cooled down where we come back together, but you have to immediately separate. And like I said, from a preventive thing, if you're seeing a lot of these interventions, it might take a little time with regular family meetings and definite consequences where if they choose, and I strongly use the word choose, if they choose to express their anger in a physical way, then you choose the consequence that goes with that. Really, really important. So here's some specifics about family meetings, okay? So I'm a big believer in family meetings. Think about, I don't know if you've ever been at a job where there were never any staff meetings, and some of you are like, yes, that sounds like a dream job. Well, sure, unless there's problems. So, sometimes staff, like a regular staff meeting at work is a chance for everyone to know the same information, to establish guidelines, to talk through anything, to get feedback. So schedule it. Set a time when all family members can be present and protect this time. Maybe it's like every Sunday night or every Sunday afternoon at 4 or whatever. And as your children get busier and busier in different activities, this can be a challenge. But if you have a regular set time, this is when we have our family meeting. Of course, there will be the occasional times you can't keep it, but keep that regular schedule. You have to understand the purpose of it too. This is preventive. This is teaching communication and conflict resolution skills. This is teaching organization because you can also at family meetings, let's talk about the schedule for the week. There's so much you can communicate. And if you remind yourself of the purpose, it helps you keep the commitment to do it. Safe. It has to be a non-threatening atmosphere. So find out from your family what makes you feel safe. I know at school we do family meetings. I mean, not family meetings, morning meetings where the whole class, these are all kids that aren't even related to each other. They'll be going around and it has this set structure where they do like a greeting and a movement activity and a sharing and then, like telling what's going to happen for the day. But there's some teachers that have like a stuffed animal that when you have the stuffed animal, it's your turn to talk and no one can interrupt you. There's been the talking stick that I got in a curriculum. It was this beautiful beaded pen. I've had some people that have, like they have just something that represents, hey, when this person is carrying this, it has this. There's no yelling. There's no name calling. We have to establish that safe environment. Okay. Number 4, set those ground rules. Some very important ground rules. Everyone gets a chance to talk. It's not dominated by one person, and that includes the parent. Everyone, children included. This is not just a family lecture that we put on the calendar. Everyone gets a chance to talk. One person talks at a time and does not get interrupted. Parents, that means you are not interrupting your children. Now, if someone tends to go on and on, you can set a timer. It's okay to say what you feel. No one is forced to talk if they don't have anything to add. Everyone has to listen, and there are no put downs, either nonverbal put downs like eye rolls and things like that, but establish these guidelines, negotiate these, what's going to work for us in our family meeting. And these might change a little bit over time as your children get older. Self-esteem. Promote some sort of positive family interaction in this too. You might have a ritual, something like one thing I like about you is, and each person kind of goes around and says that to another family member. Or maybe part of the family meeting is a weekly celebration of, all right, what do you want to celebrate? In one of my classrooms at school, one of the teachers does shout outs and they have a whole thing, shout out. And someone's like, I've got something to share. I actually, passed all my fives multiplication, and the whole class goes, shout out. It's like they're all mutually celebrating. Come up with a tradition where you're not just celebrating accomplishment, but even effort. Like, what's something you're proud of that you've done this week? That could be like a way to build it up and really teach kids about this thing, the balance scale. So, like, for every negative interaction, it takes 5 to 20 positive interactions just to balance that out. And we're teaching them, let's be proactive about building each other up, because sibling rivalry can tear down, and have an agenda. Consider literally posting a piece of paper on the refrigerator or in some place in the house where kids can write down and parents can write down something they want to be sure to talk about at the family meeting. Because if I can't talk about it now and it's something that makes me upset, but I know I'm going to have my chance to talk, that can actually help keep things from exploding. And in the link at the end of the presentation, there's actually an agenda that I've created. Some families even keep a spiral notebook, where in the spiral notebook, they keep notes from the family meeting, and they also list the things that they're going to talk about at the next one. And it's just in a central location. And sometimes kids can write notes in that spiral notebook to parents during the week if they don't want to talk in person about something, just kind of share. So that's some guidelines for family meetings. Now imagine if you did this regularly, you might not have the constant little mini explosions that are happening. I had a family meeting once about people were getting hurt on the trampoline. We got this trampoline and it was wonderful until it wasn't. And then they all seemed to do great. And then somehow, a couple years into having the trampoline, now someone's getting hurt every single time they're on there. So we had a family meeting. All right, guys, I've got a problem with the fact that when you guys go out on the trampoline, now it just seems like someone's always getting hurt. Tell me what's going on. So each of them kind of share their perspective. Turns out they were practicing karate moves. All right, okay. So karate moves, we used to not get hurt. Now we're getting hurt. That's great, but we can't do karate. If you want to do karate, what are the guidelines then? So they came up with the guidelines of, well, if you want to do those kind of moves, only one person can be on the trampoline at a time to practice their moves, and then we're not allowed to practice them on each other unless it's mutually agreed play fighting. Okay, great. What if someone doesn't follow the rules? What do you think the consequences should be? My youngest son said, they should never be allowed to jump on the trampoline for the rest of their life. And I wrote it down. And then, of course, brothers, were like, okay. So they had their suggestions. And what we came up with through negotiation, through a family meeting was, if someone breaks these rules, they don't get to jump on the trampoline for the rest of the day. So if that's family meeting, that could prevent and respond to a lot of negative patterns you might be seeing. Okay. Now, let's see how we're doing on time. So in this video, I'll let you watch it at another time. But basically, he said the root cause for all sibling rivalry is unmet needs. So if a child is not feeling love or connection with a parent, it can lead to this festering, and they can't take out their frustrations on the adults, so they turn to the next safest one, the sibling. And that's why I included a link to the video, to the class we did for Oklahoma Family Network that I taught on 5 love languages of children. If you don't know that information, I highly recommend you do that. Each child feeling loved in the household can eliminate a lot of sibling rivalry. You're literally meeting the need that's causing the sibling rivalry. So that's like 55 minutes. So no, we're not going to watch that together, but I wanted you to have that in there. And then this is a picture of the book. All right, now here's what I love about this book. We're going to now go through a few key principles in the Siblings Without Rivalry, but they have this in cartoon form. So for some of you, looking at a cartoon versus just a chart, that might be helpful for you to see. There's in the presentation, there's cartoons, which that's a little harder for translation for Alberto to translate. So I now have a chart also from this. So one thing that's a common cause of rivalry is, our kids are like, well, you love them more. Who do you love the best? And we might say, oh, I love you all the same. No, she doesn't. She's just saying, I told you 100 times I love you all equally. Well, here's the deal. Instead of focusing on equally loved, uniquely loved. A child might ask, who do you love the best? And if you're going to show them you love them each uniquely, just say, each of you is special to me. You're my only Robin. In the whole wide world, there's no other one like you. No one has your thoughts and your feelings and your smile. And I'm so glad that you're my daughter. That is going to fill a different need than I love you all the same. So that's a common complaint of kids. They're your favorite. Oh man, I love you all. You all are each so different. Man, here's what I love about you. You can literally turn that insecurity into a compliment fest. And looky here. Here it is in chart form, if you prefer charts. And it's a little easier to translate. So instead of claiming that you have equal love, show them that you love them uniquely. Instead of saying, I love you all the same, talk about how you love each of them uniquely and what's special about this kid. That's one thing I love about all four of my children. They could not be more different. And I'm so grateful that I didn't get into the comparison game. Oh, well, why can't you be more like him? And why can't you be more like her? They're all so different. And my job as their mom was to help them discover their unique strengths and differences, which were very different than their siblings. Let's take the jobs they have. So it's just beautiful to watch, but I love them uniquely. I don't love them the same. All right. So that is one potential cause for sibling rivalry is this jealousy. Who do you love the most? That's a good response to that. What about when they are fighting over how much time you're spending? So you might be, and you see this all the time, a younger child interrupting, like, should I invite Jody to my party? Well, who else do you want to invite? I want to invite Susie and Jennifer. Then the other sibling comes up and says, Mommy, you've talked to her too long. I want to tell you something. And then the parent is so worried about equal time, that, oh, you're right. I've been spending too much time with her. All right, let's wrap this up. I need to go spend time with your little brother. And that leaves the girl trying to plan the birthday party. It's no fair. He gets his way. It's hard to be fair for parents. And the kid says, I can steal mommy away anytime I want. Instead of equal time, focus on time by need. So here's an example. Equal time can feel like less. Give time in terms of need. So instead of a child saying, you're talking to her too long, I want to tell you something. I'll be right with you. All right, let's wind this up. Someone's always left unsatisfied. Try this instead. Child one and the parent are talking. Child two comes up and says, Mommy, you talked to her too long. I need to tell you something. The adult can say, you're right. I have been spending a lot of time with her. Her birthday party is important. There's lots to plan and I want to give it my full attention. I know it's not easy to wait. When I'm finished, I want to hear what you have on your mind. When I need her, Mommy will be there for me too. That creates that kind of thought process. You can acknowledge, yes, I am having to spend a lot of time on this because this takes a little extra time. I will get to you as soon as we're done here. So you aren't constantly feeling pulled. And it's important for a child to know it isn't all about you. Sometimes you don't get your way. Sometimes an adult can't spend all their time on you. It's a beautiful life skill. Instead of giving equal amounts, you know how kids fight over, they got more cake than I did. Give amounts according to need. Here's what isn't helpful. Child saying, you gave them more than me. And then the adult saying, I did not. I gave each of you 4 things, but his are bigger. Oh gosh, that's the most annoying thing. What if you responded this way? You gave him more than me. How about, must identify a need. Oh, are you still hungry? A little. Would you like half a pancake or are you hungry for a whole nother one? Instead of arguing that I gave you equal amounts, what's the need behind the complaint? Oh, are you still hungry? No. Oh, okay. Then it sounds like you have enough. Or, oh, are you still hungry? Well, yeah. Okay. Would you like some more? Address the need and not this trying to make everything perfect. Because if they're just complaining because they had more and they aren't actually hungry, then they don't need more. So I'm not going to give more, if that makes sense. Okay. All right. Here are some other things. I hope we should run a little long. Don't forget that simple things can cause sibling rivalry. So sometimes it's just basic needs like being tired, hungry, or bored. So look at the systems and the patterns in your house. So where is sibling rivalry happening the most often? Is it bedtime routines? Do you need to have snacks after school? Look for the pattern and see if you can meet the need. I know this about me. I am not nice when I am hungry. I get what's called hangry. I know there's not a translatable word for that, Alberto, but hangry is when you're hungry, and because you're hungry, you're more easily made to be angry. Hangry. It's a big fancy term. Well, I can't be nice when I'm tired. I'm ripe and ready for a fight. So if you are having a lot of these things at school, the de-escalation strategy I'm taught as a school counselor in our second step in our mindset curriculum is offer them a glass of water. Are you hungry? Offer them a glass of water. Sometimes that irritability and that impatience and bickering could be just a basic need. So as you analyze when these things are happening, if it's every day after school, work in an after school snack. All right. I have an after school snack and I'm a grown up. Okay. Now, here's another strategy. When our kids are fussing and complaining and all that, a really important strategy we can use is to acknowledge their very real feelings. I'm going to kill him. He took my new skates. Now, if I'm going to acknowledge their feelings, a lot of us would focus on the, you can't say you're going to kill him. Acknowledge feelings. You sound furious. When I tell them that, I'm actually giving them a word for this feeling they're having so they can actually learn a different way to say it. You sound furious. You can also express what their wishes might be. You wish he'd ask for your things. Or you can offer creative expression. How would you feel about making a private property sign in your closet door? This is your stuff. The thing is, kids have to have an avenue to get out the negative feelings. Think of the negative feelings you had about your siblings growing up. They have to have a way to get the negative feelings out. And if they don't, where's that one sign? If we don't allow the bad feelings a place to come out, an expression, then the behavior is likely not to change. You know, saying things like, I didn't know you felt that way. I'm beginning to see how rough this situation is for you. It must be hard having him around all the time. You take as much time as you need to tell me what's bothering you. I want to know how you feel because your feelings are important to me. Believe it or not, when we actually allow for some of these negative feelings like jealousy, anger, disgust, contempt towards a sibling, when we allow some healthy outlet for these things and that isn't aggressive, that doesn't hurt people or property, can actually make things better. There has to be a way. If we're constantly saying, don't say that, you can't think that way. Well, they are thinking that way. How can I give them a tool to get this out in a way that doesn't hurt people or property? So here are some examples like, let's see, for expressing wishes. A child might say, I heard him laughing about me with his friends. We might say, oh, so what? That's how boys are. That's where we're completely dismissing their frustration. Instead, we could say, that hurts your feelings. You wish he'd show some loyalty to his sister. They might not be able to express what their wish is. What if we could put that wish in words for them? So look at this cool chart. All right. So if they're saying she's mean, she never lets me go with her, instead of saying stop whining, she doesn't want her kid sister tagging along, you might say, that hurts your feelings. You wish he'd shown some loyalty to his sister. Instead of when they say, look at what she did to my blouse, I'm going to take one of hers and rip it up. And I might respond, that's sick. I'm just focusing on her negative expression of feelings. Instead, I think your sister needs to know how enraged you are in writing. Maybe I give her an opportunity to write it down. There has to be a way for them to get the negative feelings out. So all these charts will be in here for you to kind of look through. Now, let's make an important distinction. There's a difference between allowing for negative feelings and allowing for hurtful actions. We permit our children to express their feelings in safe ways. We do not permit our children to hurt each other. And we have to have limits and consequences for that. A good correction tool, which we'll talk about in the consequences class, is I can acknowledge your feelings. I can see you feel really angry right now, while acknowledging limits. However, we do not put our hands on people. You can either go punch your pillow or go hang out in your room. If you continue to put your hands on, this is your consequence. I can still acknowledge their feelings and redirect, but we allow for feelings. We do not allow for harmful physical or actions. Now, we're going to go into detail about really good consequences in the class that we're having in a couple of weeks. So it's a good one. I mean, I have so much stuff to talk about in the consequences class, but this, when you come back and refer to this, could give you some ideas about what consequences might be needed. But a couple ones that I think are really cool The energy drain is where misbehavior drains energy. A really good consequence, if they keep draining one of their siblings' energy by constantly picking on them, stealing their stuff, whatever it might be, maybe a consequence is now they've got to do that sibling's chores. Man, you really drain their energy when you're constantly picking fights with them. I'm going to need you to do their chores for today. You took energy away. Now your consequence is you've got to give energy back. That's one that I really, really like. And I also like creating a cost. Like you can actually charge them money to listen to them argue. Oh, if you want to solve your problem with arguing and shouting, that's your choice. You're going to have to pay me to listen to it. All right, I'm setting the timer, $1 a minute. And I always thought that was always a good one. And you've got to create that opportunity for relationship repair. Usually they can't do that when they're still angry, but I teach my kids about for every negative, it takes 5 to 20 positives. You just cause a hurt. We got to go out of our way to fix that. These are all important things. All right, now what would a safe expression of feelings instead of a kid saying, "You stole a dime, you dirty thief," instead of me correcting them, just saying, "Hey, you sound furious, but I expect you to confront your brothers without calling names. Hey, instead of name calling, tell them how you feel or what you want. Hey, no punching. Tell your sister how angry you are with words and not fists." These are like potential responses. All right. And I know I'm running just a little late, so I did that. And back to the aggression piece. If it gets aggressive, you've got to describe what you're seeing, set those limits. You've got to separate those kids, give them a chance to cool down. And then when you have the opportunity to come back together, you can help see each other's point of view and work out a solution. If it has turned aggressive, I still also believe in the communication as well as if we've already established that we do not solve problems in an aggressive way. I'm a big believer that should be consequences for that. But I'm a believer in logical consequences. So we have a whole class on that. I really hope you join us in a couple of weeks. All right. Now also just be aware too, this is one more thing I want to make sure I cover before we go. Sometimes we're accidentally reinforcing aggressive behavior by how we respond. So a lot of times, if one of our kids punches the other child's, we spend all our time, "You can't punch her, that's not okay, and you should know better," and all that. So literally our whole entire attention is on the aggressor, not on the victim. Instead, pay attention to the victim first, give them comfort, take them away, dote on them, then you can come back and deal with the aggressor. So for example, instead of a child, don't give attention to the aggressor. Instead of a child, "She bit me." And the adult's like, "What's going on here? How many times have I told you not to do that? Leave your sister alone. You come with me. I can't trust you." And we're literally taking the aggressor with us. And they're getting all the attention. Instead, try this. "Oh, she bit me." "Oh, she bit you. Let me see. Oh, that's really red. That must hurt." People are not for biting. Your sister needs to learn what to ask for in words she wants to use. I'm spending all my attention on the person that got hurt. I'm not giving attention to the aggressor. I can have the aggressor go wait over here and I can take the victim into another room. I'm not accidentally reinforcing giving attention to the aggressor, and it might make that child be aggressive on purpose to get my attention. And I don't even realize I'm reinforcing that. So it has some great cartoons that kind of show what that might look like. Some of you might like charts, some of you might like cartoons. All right. So here are some questions. I never seem to finish everything because we need like 3 hours, Erin, but then no one will sign up for classes. All right. Now, having gone over most of the things in this, I want you to leave with asking yourself some questions. So first off, what are you doing right now what's better? Is there anything you do with your children that seems to help their relationship? Ask your kids, "Hey, is there anything I'm doing? What are things we do in our family that help you guys seem to get along? What about worse? Is there anything that seems to make things worse?" Ask your kids what they think, as there is some sort of family system. Remember when. One way to think is to look back. What do you remember your parents doing that kind of made you more hostile or not get along with your siblings? And be honest with yourself. Are you repeating some of those patterns? We do what we know. Even though we say, "I will never do that," we do. So, or remember when Is there anything your parents did that seemed to help you guys get along better? Are you doing some of those positive patterns? Also, Five Love Languages of Children. Oh, gosh, I wish everyone would read that book. And I did include a link to the video in here. How am I doing with creating individual time and connection with each of my kids? It's hard. Don't get me wrong. It's hard. But when you're purposeful about that, sometimes that fills the need and then the conflict goes away. What do I need to keep doing? What do I need to improve? So that is a great, great workshop. And like you can even email Erin and she'll send you all the handouts. I mean, there's amazing handouts that go with that class. And just think of two things. What hits you from tonight? What are two things you learned that you want to start right away? Maybe it's family meetings. Maybe it's, the energy drain. Oh, they're going to have to do the siblings chores. Maybe it's, I'm going to respond differently. And now I have a better idea about how to handle aggression. I don't know. Let's start off with two things. When we try to fix everything, we don't gain any traction because change is hard. And then we just give up. Two things that you can try right away. And look back through the materials, maybe read the book, or YouTube has some great videos by the actual authors, them talking about the book and things like that. Dig into it a little bit more. Sibling rivalry didn't happen overnight. It's not going to change overnight. Systems and patterns are systems and patterns. So two things from tonight that you might be able to start right away. Because you'll get frustrated if you think you can fix everything overnight. You can't, because there's some adjusting on the parents' part and there's adjusting on the kids' part because kids fall into patterns too. All right. So thank you so much. Again, this will be emailed to you. And I did include a link to guidelines for family meetings, and that will be in the email from Erin as well. Book reminding you of the name of the book. And then the super helpful summary article that took the whole book and kind of made cliff notes, like summarizing notes with the charts like that were included in here. That is like a good, like quick review of some of the principles in the Siblings Without Rivalry book that's just ready to go and ready to use. So this will be emailed to you as well as some extra little things that I'm going to pull in to send to Erin. So Erin, that is what I have. Now,
Thank you. Thank you so much, Lauren. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. The delay, my computer's delaying this time. I know we have one question. Nancy, can you read that question in the chat?
oh,
It
she
says,
did. Okay,
why?
let's see.
Oh, yeah.
Why
Why do
the eldest son feels
Yeah.
that he is the role model for the younger siblings. This causes rivalry because if the expectations of the eldest son are high, the younger children will have to exceed those expectations. So let me, is the oldest child feeling frustrated because they have to be the role model? Is that what that's saying, Nancy? Let's see.
she's probably talking on the other channel, maybe.
Oh, okay. Okay. Um,
There's while Nancy's
Sure. There's
oh,
another question. I was wondering, what about siblings who have to share a room, same gender, close in age? So in our classrooms at school, we have these things that's called negotiated agreements, and they draw a circle and they cut it into three parts. How we're going to treat each other, how we're going to treat the room, like they can come up with agreements. How do I treat myself? How do I treat the parents? How do we treat each other? For siblings who share a room, if the sibling rivalry is really intense, I'm a big believer in kind of supervising a family meeting and coming up with what are the rules for the room. So, what rules do we negotiate about people's stuff? Touching people's stuff without permission? What rules do we set up for how clean we keep it? What systems do we set up? But we can't just try to figure out those rules in the middle of every argument about things that are going wrong. We got to sit down and have a plan. At the beginning of a school year, teachers will sit down and they will have these discussions about what do we want our classroom to look like? How do we want to treat each other? What are the guidelines for walking in the hallway? They talk it through. They set up expectations. And then they even post it. Like they can make a poster for their room and they can go to the dollar store and get a poster and write down what the expectations are. Then, if they are having problems by not following the rules, give them a chance to have a quick meeting. All right, guys, so looks like rule number 3, you guys aren't following it. Let's figure it out. Give them a chance to negotiate it. If they can't solve that problem, you can have already decided with a meeting what the consequences are going to be. Sometimes too, when they have to share a room, they need to visually not see each other. If you Google on the internet, ways to create separate spaces in the same room, it's genius. Some people put a shower curtain in the middle of the room, and it like just creates a little separate space, a little area. If there is something that's really special to one child that they don't want the other child playing with, I mean, maybe you get a box with a lock on it. You know, some of these things are practical, but I think the biggest thing is you have to set clear expectations. And the way you can do that is with a family meeting that you help with them. Because, you know, a lot of times little siblings will start to get into all this stuff. If you've got the rules and the other child knows that we talked about the rules, we agreed with the rules, you broke the rules, here's the consequence that goes with that. I think that's where we don't feel like we're constantly responding to one disaster after the next, but we are, here's the expectations, here's the consequences, and we can be consistent in that. And then it feels more fair. Um, so that might be something to do, but it's hard learning to share. It's really hard. Now I'm thinking with this other one, when the eldest son feels like he's got to be the role model for the younger sibling, it causes a lot of rivalry, because if the expectations of the oldest son are high, the younger children will have to exceed those. There is a whole section in the Siblings Without Rivalry book, which I believe is also in Spanish. I think they have that in Spanish, where it depends on what kind of comparing we're doing. Now, the oldest child can be the role model, but if we're constantly saying as a parent, see, your brother does this, you need to be more like your brother, we have just created an environment where sibling rivalry is high. Instead, say things like, in our family, we treat our stuff with respect. In our family, we show up on time. In our family, we do what we say we're going to do. Not, you need to be more like Roberto because he does what he says he's going to do. That creates conflict, and it creates a lot of unfair expectations on the oldest. Now, here's another thing to be aware of. If we kind of put the oldest child in charge of everything, oldest children are way meaner than the parents. They don't have our fully developed brain. They don't even have the same level of love for their siblings that the parent has. So you know what they're going to do? What is the fiercest, fastest way to solve this problem? Shut them out. You know, they're going to say stuff like that if they are being forced to act like an adult. Whereas a parent, we might be more patient. This child is not going to be patient, and sometimes they're brutal because they don't want to have to mess with this. So those two things, forcing them to act like the parent or constantly comparing to them, that can create a lot of the rivalry. And our youngest children are not supposed to exceed the oldest. They're supposed to be the best version of themselves. My oldest child, total free spirit, but very organized. He travels and works from home, and he's into computer engineering. My second child is getting his PhD, and he will go to school for the rest of his life, and he absolutely loves it. He does not like, you know, being sticky and sweaty and all those kinds of things. He loves that learning environment. My third child did not go to college. He went to trade school. He likes fixing things and working with his hands, and he's a little rough around the edges and loving life and doing incredibly well out in the gas field. My daughter is very different than her brother. She's more introverted, but also very passionate and has great things. They are all so different. If I constantly were saying everyone needs to be like Austin because he's the oldest, they aren't like Austin. Their personality isn't like Austin. Their dreams are not like Austin. Each one of my children had their own dreams. So as a parent, I have to be making sure that my messages are what are your strengths? What are your strengths? What are your strengths? And of course, I want to help grow and change their weaknesses too, but not because I'm comparing them to each other. The standard is how can you be the best you from your strengths that are very different than your siblings. There are some siblings that are going to be easier than others. Sometimes it's because of our own temperament kind of more easily connects to theirs, but that doesn't mean one child's better than the other. So, that those are some systems that might be making the sibling rivalry worse. If that, hopefully that makes sense. And then sometimes, with that having to share a room, it's a privilege to have your own room, and not all families can afford a house big enough to have their own room. So learning how to share space with someone could be really helpful, because not every kid, I mean, if they go to college and have a roommate, they'll be a better roommate. But you have to create the space for those discussions to problem solve. Let's see. I'm not seeing any other questions. I think, well, let's see if there's one more. Oh, they said they have a friend who's trying to get into the chat, but it won't let them. Nope, I don't know how to do that. That is past my Zoom skill set. So, all right. Hopefully that answered some of your questions. Oh, I like this. I feel like it could benefit future romantic relationships as well. Yeah, if you're forced to live in the same room as a sibling, that you didn't choose, maybe the skills you learn there will really help when you're actually sharing space with someone that you do choose. Very true. Relationship 101. Okay. Well, that is all I have, Erin. You're
Yes,
so
sorry, I
welcome.
didn't realize I wasn't off mute. Thank you so much. And thank you guys so much. I appreciate your time, and thank you for staying with us, Lauren. I appreciate you
Oh, my
taking
pleasure.
extra time. You always give so much information. You're getting the love in the chat. So we just appreciate your time and energy you put into this.